Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My name is Scott Hanselman. You can find me on the internet. I want to talk about JavaScript and virtual machines a little bit. If you don't know who I am, I've got a podcast. I talk about all sorts of interesting topics. I've got another show called This Developer's Life you should check out. I've also got a show called Ratchet and the Geek. So I do a lot of podcasting on the side. I guess it's really fun. Now, I do work at Microsoft. But I work in the Forest Moon in Portland, so I'm outside the Redmond reality distortion field in open source, so that's good. Yeah. And now people have said when I moved from the open source community to Microsoft that I was a sellout, and it really hurt my feelings, and I didn't know how to comfort myself. But somehow, I've been able to work through those issues. Because, you know, before Microsoft, I was just kind of like the rank and file. But after Microsoft, it's been pretty freaking awesome. So feeling good about that. Now, I want to talk about a little juxtaposition between the code and the browser. I met this gentleman at Intel. He was an older gentleman. He was probably 75 years old. He's like a distinguished engineer. This is someone that you would call a neckbeard. And neckbeard is a gender non-specific term requiring neither a neck nor a beard. If you do 40 years of anything, you get to be a neckbeard. It's an honorary thing. He wanted to become a web developer. This was a distinguished engineer, microcode, internals, or whatever, and he says, I want to learn the web. I was like, I just assumed that he would already know that stuff. Well, it turns out he'd been spending all his time at the low level and had completely missed the internet. So it's like, wait a second, what would you teach someone today who had a strong background in computer science, but literally no context for the internet? They missed out on all the good stuff, all the one-pixel GIFs, all the nested tables. How would you teach someone about the internet? So I said, well, sir, since you're an older person, there was a quote, this legendary quote from someone who said, there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. And we don't know if this guy really ever existed. It's one of those apocryphal quotes. I mean, just like when you find a quote on the internet, you can't be sure of its veracity. That was Abraham Lincoln. Now, I don't know what this guy looks like, but I do have this really old book. So we'll just, that's the guy. And he said that there's 5 computers. Now, he thought it was going to be like 1 computer per continent. It was going to be like a refrigerator-sized computer, right? And you'd send your batch job there. But this is actually happening. There's the Google computer, and the Microsoft computer, and the Rackspace computer, and the Amazon computer. They just happen to be clouds of computers. Now, this is a picture of the Microsoft Azure cloud. We're a little behind, and I recognize that. We are just getting color, and that's cool. And we're installing new Azure nodes every day. So we will catch up, so count on that. But when we build this cloud, what we're doing is building this system of virtual machines. And since this gentleman knew all about hardware, I said, well, here's what they taught you in school about what the characteristics of an operating system are. It has to have memory management and threading, and these are the things. That's a virtual machine. And now you can take that virtual machine, lie to it about the hardware, and move it from place to place. You can stick it in your data center, you can stick it in your cloud, you can move it on-premise. It's amazing. This is infrastructure as a service. But you're responsible for it. Just like if you get a puppy, you have to keep it alive. This is why I don't have a puppy. The virtual machine is something that you have to manage. And you can even run like Linux on Azure, and no one knows why it's allowed, but it's okay. You can go up to VM Depot, and we have over 400 community Linux images. So if I wanted to go and get an instance of Jenkins on Ubuntu running, I could go and find that. I can grab these instructions things at the command line, and I can go and run the open source Azure command line, which runs on just npm install Azure. Go and install this instance of Jenkins in just a few minutes. And I showed this to the guy at Intel, and he said, that was amazing. I mean, it would take me a week. I would have to actually fax a guy in IT to provision a virtual machine, and it would take like a week to get that to happen. And I was like, no, man, it's amazing. And we have ASCII art now, so there's so much you can do with Microsoft Azure. And he's like, well, I understand that there's this thing about, virtual machines, but what about this platform as a service? And I was like, well, you can make websites where you don't have to think about the underlying operating system, and it's kind of like trashing your hotel room. Like if you own a home, you really can't have a house party at your house because you have to reassemble your house after the house party. With a hotel room, you can trash it like every night, and you don't have to think about what's going on underneath, and that's just like awesome. And he's like, well, maybe I want to do platform as a service then. That's probably more what I want to do. I don't want to think about virtual machines. I said, well, what's great about that is that you can scale these things elastically. You can just slider bar your way to glory. Your boss says, hey, can you scale the system? And you got to go, whoa, yeah, 3 nodes? I'm going to have to work from home and think about that. And then I go to one of my remote offices. I've got actually, do you know about this? I'm a global brand. I have 17,000 remote offices all over the world. Have you been to Panera? It's Hanselman International, also known as Conference Room B. And I can go and say site scale instances 3, and then I just made my podcast site have 3 instances, and I built a server farm. And it's funny because even though this gentleman was in his 70s, and I'm not quite in my 70s, we both were like updating a server farm. Like it used to take us a consultant and a week to build a server farm and do load balancing. And now it's a command line, and that's amazing. Poof. And because it's all using backend JSON and RESTful services, I can go and just say --JSON and actually talk to these backends myself. So it's all programmatic. So he was like, yeah, that's amazing. What just happened? And I said, well, magic. Now, any good cloud, an Amazon cloud, a Rackspace cloud, or an Azure cloud, doesn't care about language choice. It was really important because he wanted to know what language should I speak? What language should I use to talk to my cloud? I know C++ because I work at Intel. Can I do that? And I was like, you can do whatever you want to. Any good cloud does not care about it. You can run .NET, you can run Node, you can run PHP, you can run frickin' Erlang, whatever. You have to say it like that too, by the way. It's not just Erlang, it's frickin' Erlang. Open cloud is a good cloud. That's what I say. We've open sourced piles and piles of stuff. All the Azure stuff that I showed you is all up on GitHub, so check that out. Now, he's like, okay, I get that you've got virtual machines on the server, and then they're elastic, and I can pick any language I want. The concept of scaling is now largely simplified. What else do I need to know about this back end? And I said, well, on the back end, they've up-leveled the problem space that you're thinking within, where you really literally don't have to worry about the machines underneath. I saw this guy, Adrian Cockcroft. Have you seen him? He's one of the chief architects at Netflix. Okay, guy got like Anderson Cooper hair, and he's like English, which gives like +2 charisma just for showing up for stuff. And he was giving this presentation in Denmark about the cloud and how they scaled Netflix to Europe. And the way he told it was like, I can't do an English accent, but he was like, blah, 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 Cassandra, blah, 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 Amazon Web Services, pushed a button, and then we were in Europe. And everyone's like, oh my God, you're amazing, Adrian Cockcroft. And then this at the end, he was like, are there any questions? And I was like, I don't know, you got like a PhD in awesome. I have no questions at all, man. Like, I want to hang out with you. Is that okay? But this kid comes up, and he goes like, actually, Adrian, you had a little discussion there earlier. This is how he talked. You had a discussion about how you were switching from spinning Rust to SSDs. Well, Adrian was talking about how he could go from 500 IOPS for $1 to 3,000 for $3. Getting 6x more throughput on the hard drives for $3. And this kid was saying, well, SSDs are notoriously unreliable. And he starts going on about trim and all the internals of SSDs, and it goes and goes. And Adrian's totally cool about it. Just letting him go, letting the kid dig himself deeper and deeper. We're all like, well, this is going to be awesome. So what do you think about that, chief architect of Netflix? And then Adrian says, well, I don't care. I'm renting them. Awesome. And you know what the best part is? That the kid didn't even know he was cut. It was like a ninja movie where the blade goes down and his brain slides off his head and falls to the ground. And the body's just like, I don't know if I'm supposed to fall down or not. It couldn't have been any cooler if Adrian hadn't gone like that at the end. You know what I mean? Just like that would have been amazing. That's exactly how it felt. So I call that being Cockcrofted. trying to get that. It's probably not going to catch on, but it could happen. So that's the server side. This guy is chief architect. He's like, I don't think about that. The business problem has been abstracted. Okay, so then he says, all right, well, talk to me about the browser. Talk to me about JavaScript and what's going on in the browser. I said, remember when we were talking about operating systems and hardware and the characteristics of an operating system? This is timeless. This is reality. This is what we want. Okay, so what does that have to do with the browser? Well, there was a time when you would sit down at a computer like this and you would type, but in fact, you were talking to a refrigerator that was in a back room. And when you wanted to go and do something like this, I'm sorry, hang on. There you go. When you wanted to go and do something like this, when you want to Google with Bing, you would then sit down on that machine, and then the real work was happening in the back end there, right? So you think the machine in front of you is smart, but in fact, the cloud in the back that is intelligent. And then this happened, right? 25 years ago. You remember this? 25 years ago. I don't trust anyone who wasn't there when this happened, by the way, just throwing that out there. That's the first web page, and it's actually at the same location. The URL is back. The original URL for the very first web page is back. That's so awesome. Interesting story. There's a guy at Microsoft named Heinrich who I met in the hallway, and he's super awesome. And I was like, you know, hey, how's it going? Hey, Heinrich. And he leaves. And then this guy's like, do you know who that was? I'm like, oh, some random guy named Heinrich. He wrote HTTP. Oh, okay, I know who Berners-Lee is. I don't know who Heinrich is. So I go on Wikipedia, and holy crap. And I look at the HTTP spec, and there's Heinrich Frisk-Nielsen. He was Berners-Lee's intern. So then later in the day, he comes into the kitchen, and I'm just like, hey, good job on the internet. We have the same boss now. Like, what do we do? What do you do with that? What have you ever done, Scott? I had a FidoNet node. I have no idea. I cannot speak to Heinrich anymore. I just definitely Visual Basic. Definitely Visual Basic. I have no way I can talk to him about anything anymore. And then this happened. And how did we know that this happened? Because we were clicking around in this amazing hypermedia world that Berners-Lee had created, and I clicked on a page, and then Java loaded on that page. And I had a virtual machine, an actual virtual computer running inside the browser. And then these guys were like, we can do it too. And then these guys were like, we've got YouTube. But what were they trying to do? What was the essence of what they were trying to accomplish was that. A virtual machine running inside the browser because the web wasn't cutting it. We started to get this weird kind of Inception thing, running machines inside of machines inside of machines. You've seen Inception, right? Inception is that movie about when you run a virtual machine inside another virtual machine, time slows down. So people started doing this. I went to Toyota recently to get my car fixed, and the guy used to terminal into an AS400 in the back end, and he had a little VT100 terminal. And I came in, and it was a new day, and he said he got a whole new system. I'm going to show you the new system. So he boots up Windows XP, and I'm just like, and he brings up like Firefox 4, and then he opens a jar file manually, and then he opens up this terminal, and then terminals into the same AS400. And then says it's so much better than it was before. I think we've kind of lost our way a little bit and forgotten why we were trying to accomplish this, why we wanted these virtual machines so desperately. We ended up with these weird documents that were living inside of a system with an island of virtuosity right there, and then all it was good for was for physics demos. It had no real value. And we eventually learned that it was not the panacea that we thought it could be. And then this happened because it's fun to say Java. That's the only reason that it's named JavaScript, I've decided. I don't know. I know that the guy that made it up is backstage, and he can't stop me, though, because I'm up here. Hey, Scott, why is it called JavaScript? Because it's fun to say Java. So don't do that, though. They don't like that at all. Like, it's very disrespectful. Not OK. This is a flowchart of what it's like to work in JavaScript. It's an extremely productive environment. And I thought that all JavaScript was good for was for saying alert pwned. Like that was what I did with, hey man, you think you got a good system? Alert pwned. That's my first name. Little Bobby Tables has got you again. You know, and then people started doing stuff like this, complete Commodore 64 emulators in JavaScript, you know. And I remember the very first time I knew JavaScript was something useful was when I was filling out a form. I think we all remember this moment. We had this moment. I was filling out a form and I hit tab, and it said there was something wrong with my form input. And I did it again, and I hit tab, and then it said there was something wrong. It didn't go back to the server. I started running around with my laptop, like, I gotta show somebody this. I go over to my wife, wake my wife up, look at this. It validated and it did, and you don't, wake up. Doesn't care. They started making things like this, virtual machines that run entirely in the browser. So I thought it would be cool. I could certainly show you this, but that would be lame. Do we have interwebs here? Processing, request, processing, request. We do not have, are you really processing the request, Chrome, or you just think that you are? What's happening? What is that? All right, well, forget you, machine. All right, I'm talking to myself. Does anyone know what's happening to the internet? Okay, and jiggle the wire. Thanks, Berners-Lee. Pretty sure it's not actually his fault that the internet cable's not working. That's fine. They would go and they'd made a complete virtual machine. So what I ended up doing was I ran this virtual machine, which is a JavaScript x86 emulator running JS Linux. And then I ran it on my Windows machine inside of Chrome, and then I ran an iOS iPhone emulator, and then ran that inside of mobile Safari, and then loaded this, and then within that ran TCC to compile a C application to say, hello world. Why? Because internet. Now you might be asking yourselves, is this the time when we see Quake in the browser? No. No, it's not. If you take the things that JavaScript has and you apply them to that box diagram that we've been looking about at the description of an operating system, you want threading, we've got web workers, you want memory management, we've got garbage collection. JavaScript is an operating system. JavaScript is a virtual machine that we don't have to worry about plugins for. This is actually happening. And then this is bringing to fruition Atwood's law. That any application can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript, which is a really, really creative and awesome law, except he forgot Hanselman's law that any application that can be written in Microsoft Excel will be written in Microsoft Excel, including a complete pixel-perfect emulation of Pac-Man where each cell is a pixel. This is actually such an amazing application that it cannot be stopped. Did you actually, did you guys hear about my, here, I'm going to just shut that down for a second. Did you guys see my Halloween costume? I went as Microsoft Outlook. What I did is I got this curtain, this shower curtain, and I just hung it in front of me, and I had a sign that said, not responding. And then I would just walk around and refuse to talk to people. So that operating system now lives in this other operating system on the tiny pocket supercomputer that I've got with me. And this guy doesn't think it's time. This guy, great haircut, by the way. I'm glad you have $1 billion. He says this is not going to happen, but I think that some of our great philosophers can say that it will happen, in fact. Who said this? The avalanche has already begun. It's too late for the pebbles to vote. Seriously, the mountain is coming down. The mountain of HTML5 is coming down, and you can't stop it. Who said that? Kierkegaard? Dick Van Patten? Kosh. Yes, thank you. Kosh from Babylon 5. Take that, Zuckerberg. HTML5 is great, but it really isn't anything anymore. HTML5 is this collection of stuff. HTML5 is just like div. That's all HTML5 is, right? That's really HTML5. All the stuff that you need to know around it. Now, there was a time when HTML tables was it. Like, you could get a job just knowing tables. You could be like a homeless person, and you could say, like, hey, you know tables? Man, get up in here. Let me get you an apartment. Well, hang on now. Do you know Roseban? Oh, well, you're a senior engineer at that point. I know that the number of nested tables, the maximum number of nested tables you can have in Netscape 4 is 32. And you only know that when you are staring the 33rd table in the face. So HTML is just simpler than ever, right? It's only the structure, and CSS is the color, and we love CSS. CSS is amazing. It's intuitive, and it's thoughtful. It allows us to do virtually anything in a very terse and clear way, allowing us to achieve our dreams better than any markup language before it. And JavaScript is everything else. And of course, we don't even need to learn the bad parts of JavaScript anymore. Now, there was someone who said JavaScript is the assembly language of the web. Anyone remember who said that? I said that. What's wrong with you people? I said that. I said that, and it got everyone else also said it. I said it first, though. I said that, and then everyone on Reddit disagreed. So then I called the people who invented it. I called Brendan Eich, and I said, Brendan Eich, do you think this is true? That is actually Brendan Fraser. That is Brendan Eich. But Brendan Fraser is a beautiful man, and let's talk about Brendan Fraser for a second. Brendan Fraser said to me, yes, it is in fact the x86 of the web, and actually I should take a moment to thank some of the people who've made my JavaScript experience a special one. People like John Ressig, Yehuda Katz, Lisa Larson, Kelly, Paul Irish, Christian Heilman from Mozilla is awesome. And then, of course, I mean, Douglas Crockford is amazing guy, super, super awesome guy. People let layers add too much complexity, though, right? You think that you're going to use jQuery, it's going to be awesome, this project's going to turn out great. And somehow it doesn't work out. Because no one really writes JavaScript anymore, right? They write jQuery. Who said that? Well, jQuery said that. jQuery, of our great American actors. If you've not seen some of the work that jQuery has done, check out his IMDb page, specifically Night of the Living Fred and Zombievers was also a really great accomplishment from jQuery. So what's great about this is if you want to get people to stop writing jQuery is you just tell them this and you'll never be able to say jQuery again. I've ruined jQuery as a word for you right now because every time you say jQuery, you'll be thinking of jQuery. Because you want to build something with JavaScript, it's going to be amazing, I can visualize it, and this is what I think it's going to look like, and it didn't quite work out the way I thought it was going to look out. And I don't know whose fault it was. And I feel really bad. Like, I don't really know. Use Vanilla.js, right? Spend some time with Vanilla.js, you know? And kind of in conclusion, I think we should start expecting a little bit more from our web tools. These things need to fit together a little bit more. Take a look at this here. This is something that we've been working on. I've got Chrome on the right here, and I've got an application, I've got Visual Studio on the left. And I'm going to go ahead and run Chrome, bring up my site. This processing request thing is kind of a problem, Chrome. I don't mean to give you the Excel treatment, but there were only 40 of you running, so you should have been able to pull that off, brother. This is going to be amazing because this is going to be the equivalent of not sticking the landing. When here, I'll just what's going on? Bring up the browser. See, it's the silence that hurts the most, isn't it? How can I let them know I have no inner monologue? So I'm going to go over here, and you know, I could type some stuff here and hit refresh, and type some stuff here and hit refresh. But what if I could actually go like this and click design, and as I'm moving around, talk back to the editor, maybe click here, and then just start typing in the div, and have that show up in my C# code. That would be kind of cool. Then I could go and refresh the page. That's not really that cool. What if I could hit Chrome's F12 tools, or this is Firefox, actually. I don't know how to use Firefox. Let's go back to Chrome. I know there's some tools in there, but they have changed since the last time I have seen them, so I do not know how to use those tools. I'm very confused. I'm going to cut bait on that one. And be able to plug these things in together so that JavaScript and CSS and all the standards are working with our editors and giving us a better experience. And I told this gentleman, you've got this amazing scale and elasticity on the cloud. You've got really, really powerful machines that are hitting your server, your pocket supercomputer that you use right now to argue with cats and strangers on the internet. You could be utilizing on the client side. So use the unlimited virtual machines on the server. Use the virtual machine you have running in your browser and put that thing to work, because I don't think your cloud has to work that hard. And I told this gentleman, you're not obsolete, sir. You're powerful. Get out there. You know the cloud already. Program the browser. Get to work. Thank you very much.